Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the webinar on quantities in candy, number of users, etc. My name is Rubesh Rattan. I'm a senior consultant here at the CCS regional office in Dubai. It is my pleasure to present this webinar to you. Today, I will be showing you how to use various quantities, number of user, etc. in candy. We will commence with the basics in order to ensure that everyone is of a fairly similar level of understanding as we go through to some of the more advanced functionality. Due to the large number of people logged into this webinar, we will not be able to answer any questions during the webinar. However, please submit your questions during the session with the provided function on screen. At the end of the webinar, we will collate these questions and send the answers to everybody that registered for this webinar via email. Please note that the webinar will be recorded and you will receive a link to download it. There is a webinar once a month on various candy topics. Should you not be able to attend the webinar at the given time frame, then please still register for the webinar, as this will entitle you to receive a recorded copy of the webinar. So let's get started. Quantities in candy, number of users, etc. When it comes to commercial management in construction industry, bill of quantities or POQ is the term which brings attention of every construction professionals and stakeholders. Generally, BOQ is in tabular form, which contains description, unit, quantity, rate, and amount in different columns. It is the actual or estimated work will be carried out to complete the project. The works have been measured in different units. They are linear meters, square meter, cubic meter, number, items, etc. Value of measured works will be calculated by multiplication of quantities and rate. So today in this webinar, we will be covering the following: identifying the input quantities in candy, also identifying the various system generated quantities in candy, and finally the derived quantities in candy. So the quantities in candy can be categorized in general as input quantity, system generated quantity, and derived quantity. So what is input quantity in candy? Regarding input quantity, the quantity that the user can manually type in, or the quantity that can be imported from external files like Excel. Regarding system generated quantity, system generated quantities are quantities generated based on input quantity, or it can be quantities saved in the system. And finally, regarding the derived quantities in candy. Regarding derived quantities are quantities derived based on the difference between different quantities in candy. So to begin with, let's familiarize with the various quantities available under candy estimating. As you all are aware, estimating is the major component of candy, and it exchanges data with all other components of the system. So the various estimating related input quantities are: we have this bill quantity. Also under input quantity, we got this final quantity. And lastly, under estimating, another input quantity is bill quantity based on number of. Okay, so what is this bill quantity? Bill quantity is the contractual quantity for the bill item. Regarding bill quantity, the bill quantity can be entered manually against a bill item. Alternatively, double-clicking on a bill quantity displays a calc sheet where detailed measurements can be recorded to calculate the quantity. If there is a calc sheet, a green dot is displayed in the bill quantity field. Also, the bill quantities can be locked to prevent changes being made. The lock applies to all the bill items. Right click in the header of the column and select bill item locking, then choose lock the bill quantities, and this locking indicated by an orange dot in the field. And regarding final quantity, this is the anticipated ultimate quantity of the bill item. The final quantity is used at post and stage to calculate the remaining cost when using the cost rate worksheets and the remaining quantity. As a hint, double-clicking on a final quantity displays a calc sheet where detailed measurements can be recorded to calculate the quantity. If there is a calc sheet, a green dot is displayed in the field. So let's switch to Candy to understand where to locate these input quantities in Candy estimating. Under Candy estimating, I will now show you how to access the Candy estimating document manager. You can select the documents menu in the estimating application and then select estimating document manager, or you can select the tool button with the picture of Blue Book. Either option will result in the estimating document manager window opening. The bill of quantities can be viewed, edited, and priced using various layouts under estimating bills in the estimating document manager. Okay, so now let's select the bill document with the required layout set up beforehand to discuss about the different input quantities used in the pre-tender stage. I will select the already customized document 1.2a BOQ with bill and final quantity. So let's select this document. So this layout, as you can see, has got this input quantities, bill quantity, and final quantity. Let me go back to the first page in the BOQ. So click on that page navigation arrow on the bottom left-hand side. And in this page navigation arrow, I got the bill quantity and the final quantity. Okay, I'm going to update the final quantity over here. Let's type in the final quantity in this final quantity column. I can type in a quantity, let's say 5850 as a final quantity. And once I type in the final quantity in the final quantity column, based on the net rate, I got the final net amount. Let's now customize this BOQ and see where these quantity columns are available. For that, in the document, let's select the view menu and select add or remove columns. So from the view menu, select add or remove columns. So here on the left hand panel, the available column headings are listed, and the selected column headings for the document is listed in right hand panel. Depending on the document layout required, user can create customized document by selecting the required columns from the available pick list. One can double click on the available column header and then can select the required columns into the selection using green arrow. Regarding quantities, if I double click on number 3 quantities in the right hand panel, you will find the bill and final quantity under serial number 3.1 bill quantity and under serial number 3.3 final quantity. I am going to add a variation quantity column into this document. So that 3.6 variation quantity, once the column is selected, I can use the green arrow to transfer this column heading to the selection. So click on that green arrow, and with the column heading added into the document, I can use this blue up and down arrow to position the selected column heading. Using blue up arrow, I am going to position this variation quantity column after the final quantity. Once the required columns are selected, click on OK to save my selection. Okay, regarding that variation quantity, which is the difference between final and bill quantity. So a quantity of 450 updated based on the difference. Okay, so here with this customized document titled BOQ with bill and final quantity, let me remove that variation quantity column from the document view. I can use the keyboard shortcut Control F1 for customizing my document layout. So holding the control button in keyboard and pressing the function key F1 on keyboard, the customized document column layout will open. Now using the red arrow, I can remove the variation quantity column from the document view. Click on OK to save my selection on the document. Okay, closing this document, and let's switch back to the PowerPoint. And regarding bill number of quantity, another input quantity under Candy estimating. So what is this bill number of quantity? Well, where the bill item quantities are for one item, the number of is used to calculate the total for the number of items. As an example, well, in a typical villa project, the bill quantities may be measured for one villa type. The number of villa for each villa type is entered in the number of column. Every bill item for each villa type must have the number of entered. The number of is used to calculate the net amount based on number of, gross amount based on number of, or the selling amount based on number of. These are columns available in the pick list. Well, when creating the reports that use number of, include the gross amount and the gross amount based on number of columns. This will provide the price per villa and the total for each villa type. Resource analysis reports can be printed using the total quantity for each bill item, that is bill quantity based on number of. To familiarize with the bill number of, let's switch back to Candy to understand where to locate this quantity in Candy estimate. So I can select the tool button with the picture of blue book to open the estimating document manager. From the estimating document manager, I will select the already customized document 1.2 BOQ with bill number of quantity. In this document, already the columns based on, if I select the document, already the columns based on bill quantity, final quantity, bill quantity based on number of, bill number of, and final number of quantity columns are available. So as an example, let's assume this tender bid is towards pricing 10 number identical substations. And by entering the factor of 10 in number of column, the bill and final quantity can be arrived. So to apply the number of, I can right click on that number of column header. So once I right click, from the drop down menu, I can select the menu, apply a factor to the number of quantity. So with the applied factor typed in as 10, I can click on green tick and the below message indicating the total number of bill items processed. So with the number of applied, I got the total bill quantity based on number of and the total final quantity based on number of. And with that, the total net amount based on bill quantity and total net amount based on final quantity updated in the BOQ. Okay, so once we familiarize with the various input quantities under Candy estimating, let's familiarize with the system generated quantity under estimating. So moving back to the PowerPoint, and regarding the system generated quantities, the system generated estimating quantities are, we got the bid bill quantity, also the bill quantity based on number of, final quantity based on number of, QTO quantity. Okay, what is this bid bill quantity? Bid bill quantity, the bill quantity used in the estimate. This is the bill quantity that was stored in the valuation setup as the bid bill quantity. Bill quantity based on number of, regarding bill quantity based on number of, this is the total bill quantity of the bill item. Final quantity based on number of, regarding final quantity based on number of, this is the total final quantity of the bill item. And another system generated quantity, that QTO quantity, the quantity measured and copied from QTO takeoff for the bill item. So let's switch to Candy to understand where to locate these quantities in Candy estimating. I can select the tool button with the picture of blue book to open the estimating document manager. From the estimating document manager, I will select the already customized document 1.2C BOQ with bid, bill final and number of quantity. Let's select that document. So the various system generated quantities, that bill number of, final number of, bid quantity. Regarding that bid quantity, now I need to establish that bid quantity. For that, I can right click on that bid quantity column and then select this menu, preserve the bid rates and quantities. Click on yes to record jobs, bid rates and bill quantity. Advantage, always one can see on what rates and what quantity based on which one has quoted for this bid. Okay, so these are all the system generated quantities, and now moving to the derived quantities in Candy estimating. So regarding the derived quantities, we got this variation quantity, and also another derived quantity is bid minus bill quantity. Regarding the variation quantity, the difference between the final quantity and the bill quantity. And regarding bid minus bill quantity, the difference between the bid bill quantity and the bill quantity used in the estimate. Okay, let's switch back to Candy to understand about these derived quantities in Candy estimating. Again, I'm going to select that tool button with the picture of blue book to open the estimating document manager. From the estimating document manager, I will select the already customized document 1.2D BOQ with derived quantities. So let's select that document. Okay, here I got the variation quantity and the bid minus bill quantities, those derived quantities under Candy estimating. And variation quantity, the difference between final quantity and bill quantity, and bid minus bill quantity, the difference between bid bill quantity and bill quantity used in the estimate. And also, if I scroll to the right, you can see the variation amount and the bid minus bill quantity amount difference. Okay, so once we familiarize the derived quantities in Candy estimating, let's switch back to the PowerPoint. Okay, moving to the various quantities in valuations. So regarding valuations, the bill of quantities created in Candy estimating is available in Candy valuations. The difference between estimating and valuations are the extra valuation quantity columns, valuation layouts, and the valuation reports. So let's have a look at various progress quantities in Candy valuations. Valuation input quantities. So what are all the input quantities under Candy valuations? We got the bill quantity, also the final quantity, bill number of quantity, also the actual quantity based on number of, another input quantity in Candy valuations, month's actual quantity, next month's forecasted quantity, also the claim quantity, months claimed quantity, user quantity, area actual quantity, and area claimed quantity, and finally area final quantity. So as you can see, against all these quantities, a serial number is listed. So those serial numbers, when we customize these documents, you will find the serial numbers in the available column pick list against those quantity related column headings. So first, let's see what is bill quantity. The bill quantity can be manually entered against a bill item. Regarding final quantity, the final quantity is used at post-tender to calculate the remaining cost when using the cost rate worksheets and the remaining quantity. Regarding bill quantity based on number of, where the bill items quantities are for one item, the number of is used to calculate the total for the number of items. Actual quantity, the actual cumulative quantity to date for a bill item used for internal reporting. It measures the actual amount of work done to generate the allowables for the period. Regarding actual number of quantity, the bill quantity represents one unit and the actual number of is the number of units actually completed. The actual number of is multiplied by the bill quantity to update the actual quantity. Months actual quantity, another valuation input quantity, which is basically the difference between the actual quantity progressed and the previous actual quantity. Next month's quantity. Next month's quantity is the forecasted quantity to be completed next month. One can enter the quantity expected to be completed in the next month. This will provide the resources that need to be ordered for the expected work during the next month. Regarding claimed quantity, the quantity to be claimed for the work done to date. Months claimed quantity. Months claimed quantity is the difference between claimed quantity to date and the previous claimed quantity. Another input quantity is user quantity, a quantity the user can manage as required. The user quantity column can be added to the valuations document. You can change the description of the user quantity heading, right-click in the user quantity column and choose the change user quantity heading menu item. Area actual quantity. This is the actual quantity of work completed to date in designated area. Area claimed quantity. This is the claimed quantity of work completed to date in designated area. And the final input quantity on the Candy evaluations, area final quantity. And area final quantity, this is the final quantity of designated area. So let's switch to Candy to understand where to locate these quantities in Candy valuations. Okay, let's move to the valuations tab. Right, as I enter the valuations tab for the first time, I need to do an initial valuation setup. So once I click on the main menu in valuations tab, it will open the initial valuation setup dialog box where I can enter the progress valuation details. With the progress valuation details entered, keeping progress valuation date as 25th and the valuation title as valuation number 1, I can click on OK to open the valuations document manager. Right, I can now open the valuation setup manager. Now, in order to refresh this document, I would press calculate. So click on the calculate button on the bottom right hand side. Okay, when there is no final quantity, Candy will automatically reflect the bill allowable amount as the final allowable for the time being. The rest of the allowable amount will be covered once I progress into the webinar. Let's now go and have a look at the different valuation document layout I already set up to save some time to discuss about the progress valuation quantities in Candy. So you can select the documents menu in the valuations application and then can select valuations document manager, or you can select the tool button with the picture of blue book. Either option will result in the valuation document manager window opening. Okay, now I'm going to create a valuation view based on primary input quantities. To create a new document, I'm going to right click on 2.1 valuation input actuals, and then from the drop down menu I can select duplicate document. Right, now I need to rename the document based on primary input quantities. I can press the function key F2 on keyboard to edit this document. I'm going to rename this document as 2.1a primary valuation input quantities. With the document renamed, I need to customize the document. So let's customize the document to add those input quantities. So here already I got the input quantities under valuations, bill quantity and final quantity. Other input quantities under Candy valuations are, if I double click on that bill and final quantities number 3 under available column pick list, I got the bill number of, so I can use the green arrow, and also under the actual quantities, under the input quantities, under number 8 actual quantities, let me double click. Already that actual quantity is available in the selected columns, so I can use the down arrow to position that column after the bill number of. Also, I need the actual number of 8.2 actual number of. Let's use the green arrow to transfer that column to the selection. Also, the month's actual quantity, which is already available in the selected column. Again, using the blue down arrow to position the column after the actual number of. Also, another input quantity, month's actual quantity, 8.4. Let's use the green arrow. This is already available, month's actual quantity. And the forecasted quantity, next month's quantity, 8.5. And the next column I need to pick is claim quantity. Under number 10 claim quantities, if I double click, I got 10.1 claim quantity. Let's use the green arrow to transfer the column. And finally, month's claim quantity, which is 10.2 month's claim quantity. So these are all the input quantities under Candy valuations. So there is a previous actual quantity column available there. I can remove that column from the document view. Okay, with the columns added, click on OK to save my selection. And now I can select that primary valuation input quantity document. So let's select that document. So here I got the bill quantity, the final quantity, and also the quantity based on the number of all the various input quantities under Candy valuations. Okay, I am now going to enter a progress. To enter the progress in the actual percentage final quantity column, I can enter the progress percentage. and this will update the progress quantities against that item. This actual percentage final quantity column will show the actual quantity as a percentage of final quantity. So if a quick valuation needs to be done, then this method is quite useful. So for clear sight, I will enter the progress as 100% in the actual percentage final quantity column. So now it shows my actual quantity exceeds my bill quantity, which is fine since I updated my final quantity. My actual quantity progressed 5,850 meters square, which is reflected in my claim quantity, and my claim quantity reflected in paid quantity based on the default valuation quantity order. I can change the default valuation quantity order at any point of time by clicking on the document menu Tools, Valuation Quantity Tools, and Set Default Quantity Order. I now have the following options to select from. First option, actual quantity is reflected in claimed, and claimed is reflected in paid quantity. Second option, claimed quantity is reflected in paid, and paid is reflected in actual quantity. And final option, claimed quantity gets reflected in paid quantity. For this session, I will leave this as default. My actual quantity is reflected in my claimed, and my claimed is reflected in my paid quantity. I can click on green tick and tells me that the action is complete. Right. Now let's move to user quantity. I can close this document and move into user quantity in the Candy valuations. User quantity is an additional quantity column where the user can manage the quantities in valuation bill. So from the valuations document manager, I can click on that blue book. Let's open the document 2.2b, today valuation bill with user quantity. With the user quantity column already added into this document to save some time. So here I got the user quantity column, and I can enter a user quantity of, let's say, 5850 meters square. I can set first item clearance script site, and based on that I got my user net amount and my user selling amount. This additional quantity gives the user the flexibility to manage the valuation BOQ using an extra quantity option. Okay, moving to another valuation input quantity, next month's quantity. Regarding next month's quantity is the forecasted quantity to be completed for the following month or period. We can either manually enter the quantities or use an existing forecast within Candy to update these quantities. It is an independent quantity, thus it won't affect any other quantities in Candy. So in this webinar, I will show you how to enter the next month's quantity manually in the progress valuation bill. So for that, first I need to add next month's quantity column into this document. I can use the keyboard shortcut Control F1 for customizing this document layout. So hold the Control button in keyboard and press Function key F1 on keyboard to open the customized document column layout. I can find the required columns from the available column pick list by typing in the column heading. So here I need the next month's quantity column. So I can type in next and then click on find. Okay, here I have that 8.5 next month's quantity, and I can use the green arrow to transfer the next month's quantity column into the selection. I can position that next month's quantity just below the user quantity using that blue up arrow. Okay, now I can click on OK to save my selection, and here I got the next month's quantity. Okay, right, with the next month's quantity column added into the document, let's assume in the next month that excavate in bulk item B, and excavator foundation, item C, on page number 1 are forecasted to complete 100%. So I can manually type in the forecasted quantities in the next month's quantity column. So 10,800 for that next month for item B, and regarding item C also forecasted to complete 100%. So the total quantity 1125 updated in the next month's quantity column. Okay, now based on this, we can forecast the resource usage for the next month. I can now click on the resource document related shortcut R for resource list, and this document showing the allowables based on against the resources including the next month's allowables. I can click on calculate, and the forecasted allowables for the next month generated. Okay, so now let's switch back to the PowerPoint, and regarding the system generated quantities under Candy valuations. So what are all the system generated quantities under Candy valuations? I got the bid bill quantity, the bill quantity based on number of, final quantity based on number of, also the QTO quantity, the previous actual quantity, also we got the previous claim quantity, the paid quantity, months paid quantity, another system generated quantity, previous paid quantity, also the archived valuation quantity, another system generated quantity, area paid quantity, area total actual quantity, and finally area total final quantity. Okay, what is this bid bill quantity? This is the bill quantity that was stored in the valuation setup as the bid bill quantity. Regarding bill quantity based on number of, this is the total quantity for the bill item. Regarding final quantity based on number of, this is the total final quantity for the bill item. Another system generated quantity, QTO quantity. Regarding QTO quantity, the quantity measured and copied from QTO takeoff for the bill item. Previous actual quantity. Well, when the next valuation is created, the actual quantity is copied to previous actual. Only the immediately previous month's cumulative quantity is available as a column on the bill document. Previous claimed quantity. The quantity claimed up to the end of the last period. Regarding paid quantity, the quantity used by the client to calculate the payment to date. What is months paid quantity? Months paid quantity is the difference between the paid quantity to date and the previous paid quantity. Regarding previous paid quantity, the quantity used by the client to calculate the payment up to the end of the last period. Archived valuation quantity. Regarding archived valuation quantity, the quantity is archived for all the previous monthly valuations. Regarding area paid quantity, this is the paid quantity of work to be completed in a designated area. Also the area total actual quantity, the total of the actual quantities from all the areas against a bill item. And finally, under system generated quantity, we got this area total final quantity. Regarding area total final quantity, the total of the final quantities from all the areas against a bill item. So let's switch back to Candy to understand where to locate these quantities under candy valuations. So let's close all these open documents. Okay, I can click on that E for valuation bill shortcut to open the valuation bill document. So this layout will cover all those system generated quantities except area progress quantities that has been covered during my overview. So we got the bill number of, final number of, also the QTO quantity columns, and then the previous actual, previous claimed, and previous paid quantity columns. With us being in valuation number 1, there is no previous progress quantities, and henceforth the quantities are blank in those previous actual, claimed, and paid quantity columns. Okay, once we familiarize with the system generated quantities, let's move to the derived quantities under candy valuations. So what are all the derived quantities under candy valuations? Okay, regarding valuation derived quantities, we got the bit minus bill quantity. Also, we have this outstanding paid quantity, paid less actual quantity. Also, another derived quantity is variation quantity. We got the remaining quantity, bill outstanding quantity, also the final outstanding quantity, requested months quantity, overvalued quantity. Okay, what is this bit minus bill quantity? Bit minus bill quantity, again the difference between the bit bill quantity and bill quantity used in the estimate. Outstanding paid quantity, regarding outstanding paid quantity, this is the difference between the claimed quantity to date and the paid quantity. Paid less actual quantity. Regarding paid less actual quantity, this is the difference between paid quantity to date and actual quantity progressed. And variation quantity, the difference between final quantity and bill quantity. Remaining quantity, what is remaining quantity? The difference between final quantity and the actual quantity progressed to date. Used in valuations to indicate the quantity of work left to do against a bill item. Multiplied by the cost rate, it produces the cost to completion. Remaining quantity multiplied by the cost rate will generate the forecasted cost to completion. Regarding bill outstanding quantity, this is the difference between bill quantity and the claimed quantity to date. Final outstanding quantity, again the difference between final quantity and the claimed quantity to date. Another derived quantity is requested months quantity. Regarding requested months quantity, this is the difference between the claimed quantity to date and the previous paid quantity by the client. Overvalued quantity. Regarding overvalued quantity, again the difference between the claimed quantity and the actual quantity progressed to date. Okay, let's switch to Candy to familiarize with all these quantities. So I can select the tool button with the picture of Blue Book to open the Valuations Document Manager. From the Valuations Document Manager, I will select the already customized document 2.2D Valuation Bill with Derived Quantities. So let's select that document. So here I got all the various derived quantities. I got the bit minus bill quantity column, the outstanding, paid minus actual, the variation quantity column, the remaining quantity, outstanding bill, outstanding final, months quantity, overvalued quantity, all those derived quantities under Candy valuations. Okay, once we familiarize with all the various quantities under Candy valuations, let's now move to the subcontractor manager in Candy. So what is this subcontract manager? The subcontractor manager is used at post-tender to handle project subcontractors, where each subcontractor has got a subcontractor bill which can be updated for payment certificates. Progress recorded in the subcontract bill may also be used to update quantities in the main BOQ. So what are all the input quantities under subcontract manager? The various input quantities under subcontractor manager are, to start with, we got this awarded quantity. Also, we got the final awarded quantity. Another input quantity under subcontract manager is due quantity. Also, we have this pay quantity. And finally, that invoiced quantity. So what is this awarded quantity? Regarding awarded quantity, the quantity awarded to this subcontractor for the BOQ items. This is the awarded quantity for this BOQ item for this subcontract, or the quantity this subcontractor was originally contracted to execute. What is final awarded quantity? Regarding final awarded quantity, the expected final quantity for this bill item in the subcontract. This is the main contractor's view of the final quantity for this bill item in the subcontract. As a note, the sum of the final awarded quantities for this bill item should equal the final quantity of the bill item. If no value is entered here, it will default to the awarded quantity. Another input quantity under subcontractor manager is due quantity. Regarding due quantity, this is the cumulative quantity that you believe the subcontractor has done. It should be regarded as an actual quantity. This is, however, not necessarily the quantity that you will pay the subcontractor. It may also be more or less than the invoiced quantity. If there is more than one subcontractor working on this bill item, the sum of the due quantities should be equal to the actual quantities in the valuations. Regarding another input quantities in subcontract manager, pay quantity. What is this pay quantity? This is the cumulative quantity to be paid to the subcontractor. It may be different from the due quantity that you measured and different from the invoice quantity. As a note, the term pay is used throughout Candy to describe the quantity or amount that is to be certified against an item in a subcontract bill. Well, this is done to avoid confusion with the term paid in the main contract. And the final input quantity under subcontract manager, the invoiced quantity. Regarding invoice quantity, the quantity invoiced by the subcontractor. This is the cumulative claimed quantity by the subcontractor for the work done to date. Again, as a note, the term invoiced is used throughout Candy to describe the quantity or amount claimed by a subcontractor against an item in his subcontract bill. Again, this is done to avoid confusion with the term claimed in the main contract. So let's switch to Candy to understand where to locate these quantities in subcontract manager. Okay, closing all the open documents using that magic wand and moving to subcontract manager application tab. Okay, to show how these quantities are managed, I need to open the subcontract document manager. So from the main menu, I can open the subcontract manager. Okay, here in this subcontractor manager, it will show a list of subcontractor packages that has already been created in the left-hand panel of the document. As you can see, I have already created a formwork package. I can select this package and then can open the subcontract bill related to formwork package. So let's click on subcontract bill to open the formwork subcontract package bill. So in the subcontract bill, there is the awarded rate, awarded quantity, and amount. Okay, now to update the subcontractor progress input quantities, I can again go back to the subcontract document manager by clicking on that shortcut with the picture of blue book. With the subcontract document manager open, I can select a document 1.3 subcontractor bill with progress update, which by default has got those subcontract progress input quantity columns. So let's select that document. So here the various subcontract progress input quantities, the invoiced, the due quantity, and finally the pay quantity and amount columns. As you can see, I have already updated the subcontract progress quantities. And there it is, the subcontract due quantities. And those due quantities I can now update against the actual quantities in the main valuation bill. Okay, once we familiarize with those input quantities on the subcontract manager, let's again go back to the PowerPoint to familiarize with the various system generated quantities under subcontract manager. So what are all the system generated quantities under subcontract manager? We got the previous due quantity, also another system generated quantity under subcontract manager, the previous pay quantity. Also we have the previous invoice quantity. So what is this previous due quantity? Regarding previous due quantity, the cumulative due quantity as at the previous period. Regarding previous pay quantity, the cumulative pay quantity as at the previous period. Regarding previous invoice quantity, the cumulative invoice quantity as at the previous period. Okay, let's switch back to Candy to familiarize with these different quantities. So closing this open document, I am going to open the subcontract document manager by clicking on that blue book. Now I can select a document number 1.3a, subcontract previous invoice due and pay quantity. So let's select that document. So the various system generated quantities under subcontract manager, the previous due, the previous pay, the previous invoice quantity columns. Okay, with as in valuation number 1, no previous quantities under those system generated quantity columns. Okay, finally let's familiarize with the derived quantities under subcontract manager. So what are all the derived quantities under subcontract manager? We got the period due quantity. Also another derived quantity is period pay quantity. We got the period invoice quantity. Also liability quantity. Another derived quantity is remaining due quantity. Also we got the remaining pay quantity, overvalued quantity, and finally overclaimed quantity. Okay, what is this period due quantity? Regarding period due quantity, the due quantity for the current period. Period due quantity is the difference between total due quantity and the previous due quantity. Regarding period pay quantity is the pay quantity for the current period, and period pay quantity is the difference between total pay quantity and the quantity paid in the previous period. Regarding previous invoice quantity, the difference between invoiced quantity to date and the previously invoiced quantity. Another subcontract derived quantity is the liability quantity. Regarding liability quantity, the difference between the due quantity and the pay quantity. the quantity that is due to the subby and the quantity that been paid by the main contractor to the subby. Well, if you measured that the subcontractor had done 1000 meter cube as an example, the due quantity, and you only authorize payment for 800 m cube, the pay quantity, then the liability quantity is the difference. The liability amounts are recorded and can be viewed in the liability document, which is accessed from the subcontract manager. Regarding remaining due quantity, the difference between final awarded quantity and due quantity. Regarding remaining pay quantity, the difference between final awarded quantity and the quantity paid to the subby. Another subcontract derived quantity is the overvalued quantity. Regarding overvalued quantity, the difference between the invoice quantity and the due quantity. And finally, overclaimed quantity, the difference between the invoice quantity and the pay quantity will give the overclaimed quantity. So let's switch to Candy to understand where to locate these quantities in subcontract manager. Okay, closing this open document, and I can select that tool button with the picture of blue book to open the subcontract document manager. And now I am going to create a subcontract BOQ based on derived quantities. So to create a new document, I am going to select new document, and then from number 1 subcontract bills, I will select 1.1 subcontract bill. Okay, with the document added, I will right click on that subcontract bill, and then from the drop down menu, I will select duplicate document to make a duplicate copy of this subcontract bill. So I'm going to create the document based on derived quantities. So I need to rename the document based on this. Again, I can right click on this document, and then from the menu I can select rename document. Okay, now I can rename the document as, let's say, 1.1a subcontractor bill with derived quantities. Okay, once I rename the document, I need to customize the document by adding the derived quantities into this layout. So I can now click on the customize button on the bottom right hand side in the document manager. Once I click on customize, now I need to add the derived quantities into this layout. So under that derived quantities, I got from number 5 due quantities, 5.2 period due quantity. I can use the green arrow to transfer the selected column into the selection. Another derived quantity is from number 7 pay quantities. Double click and open that. 7.2 period pay quantity. Let's transfer this column to the selection using the green arrow again. And also another derived quantity under invoice quantities. If I double click and open that, 9.2 period invoice quantity. And finally, under the number 11 derived quantities, I got from 11.1 to 11.5 the various derived quantities under subcontract manager. So one by one, I can add all these column headings into the selection. I can simply double click, and one by one, I can transfer those quantity columns. Finally, the overclaimed quantity. Okay, so with all the derived quantities column added into the document, I can click on OK to save my selection. And now let's select the document. So as you can see, those derived quantities: period due, period pay, period invoiced, the liability quantity, remaining paid, remaining due, overvalued, and overclaimed quantities. Okay, so those are all the derived quantities under subcontract manager. Well, That concludes this overview webinar towards the different quantities available in Candy estimating, valuations, and subcontract manager. Thank you for your time, and I trust that you have a greater insight into the quantities in Candy, number of user, etc. Please remember to email your local CCS office if you want to know more about quantities in Candy, number of user, etc. We will keep you informed of the next webinar. And remember, if you are unable to join on the selected time, then please still register and you will receive the recording, which you can then watch in your own time. Enjoy the rest of your day, and till the next webinar, goodbye for now.